Common Sense Army, it is Tuesday, and on today's episode of the Why I'm Right podcast, we're back in the studio, and there is a ton to cover. Obviously, we're going to talk about the debate that just occurred last week, the Supreme Court rulings, and how Trump keeps piling on wins as Joe Biden piles on losses. You don't want to miss this episode. This is Why I'm Right.
We live in a world filled with noise and confusion, clickbait, and outright lies in the media. But here, we cut through the clutter to find the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. This is Why I'm Right, the podcast where we dig deeper, ask the tough questions, and unravel the tangled webs of political and current events. Join us as we dissect the latest news, analyze political rhetoric, and challenge the narratives that dominate the mainstream discourse. We're not shy. From dissecting the motives behind policy decisions to uncovering the hidden agendas of public figures, it's what we do. It's time to think for ourselves. This is Why I'm Right. And now your unafraid and unapologetic host, Matt Taylor.
He is right. Welcome to the Why I'm Right podcast. I'm your host, Matt Taylor, and I know it's been a while, but we're back today and back just in time because there is so much going on in the political landscape of our country right now and really the political landscape across the globe. And today's an episode you guys don't want to miss. We have a lot to cover and a little bit of time to do it. And like I say on every podcast, the one way you can help in our mission to grow the Common Sense Army one podcast at a time is by sharing this video with your friends, your family, people who agree, people who disagree, because the most important thing in our country right now is the ability to converse back and forth and to get the real news out there. I'm not saying I'm better than anybody else out there. I'm not saying anything about my ability. It comes down to the mainstream media has been covering up so much from us, the people of this country. It's time for people like you and I to get out there and do our part to grow the Common Sense Army one podcast at a time. And if you guys can click subscribe right here below, whether you're seeing this on YouTube, on Spotify, wherever you're listening to this, make sure you guys give us a follow and check us out on social media at Why I'm Right, on Instagram at Why I'm Right Pod, on X, and make sure you visit our website at www.whyimrightpodcast.com. And without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. Like I said, it's been a little bit, since our last episode, but so much has happened just in the last week in the political landscape. So many wins for Donald J. Trump, so many losses for Joseph R. Biden. And I think finally people are starting to wake up and see it. And I've been saying this for about a year now, maybe even more than a year. Democrats have been gearing up to replace Joe Biden. And I was called a conspiracy theorist for the last year. You could check out our past podcast. I have 3 podcasts that directly break down my opinion on why they're going to do it and the signals that have been shown for the last year that Joe Biden won't be the Democrat nominee for president in the 2024 election against Donald J. Trump. But finally, it's coming true. And when I say that, the Democrat convention's coming up in a few months here, or not even a few months, just a month away now. And finally, on the debate stage, the cover-up got exposed. And when I say that, for the last 3.5, 4 years, maybe even prior to that, the MSNBC, NBC, ABC, CNN, the cover-up of Joe Biden's mental decline was in full effect. It was in full effect because they could decide what videos you saw, what videos you didn't see, what videos they show on their network to their audience, who are far left for the most part, what videos they're going to air on national television, and what is the Joe Biden, who is the Joe Biden that you as the audience of those networks are going to know. And for the last year or two, really, the blunders for Biden have gotten progressively worse, and Fox News has showed it. And if you turn on your phone and go on social media, you could really, if you're especially in the networks that I'm in, meaning the people that I follow, this has been common sense that Joe Biden is in mental decline. Joe Biden is mental fall. And as somebody who has a family member, I had a grandmother who since has passed away, a grandmother who had Alzheimer's. And the decline that she went through seems to be very similar to the decline of Joseph R. Biden. But finally, on the stage, in front of over 50 million people who watched it live, and more than they're saying now, over 100 million people have seen clips and shared clips on social media from the debate, got to actually see who Joseph Biden is today. Who is Joe Biden today? Who is the president that supposedly got the most votes in the history of our country? Who is the president that is supposedly making decisions on our behalf? Who is the president that is meeting with President Xi in China, President Putin in Russia, and world leaders across the globe? Who is that guy? And for so long, I was called a conspiracy theorist for saying this guy is just not capable today to be in those meetings, to sit down in front of Putin, to sit down in front of Xi, to sit down in front of any world leader across the globe, frankly, even the people in Congress, to sit down in front of Congress and have an intellectual conversation, to be able to have the conversation back and forth without reading a teleprompter. Who is that guy that is negotiating on behalf of America? Who is that guy that's negotiating on behalf of democracy? Who is that guy that's negotiating on behalf of the free world? And finally, the American public got a sense of that, who he is today. I'm not saying Joe Biden has always been somebody who mentally is incapable of being president. Maybe 30 years ago, Joe would have been at least capable president, meaning he could have these conversations. Forget the politics for a minute and just sit back and watch what happened on the debate stage. If you tuned into that debate, it wasn't only that you clearly see that Joe Biden is not capable of the job, but you started to see maybe how what's gone on over the last 3.5 years of his presidency, you start to ask the question, who really is running the country? Who really is running the White House? Who really is running the free world? Because it can't be that guy. It just can't. And so I want to play a clip here because, as I've said, you can go back in the archives here of the previous podcasts that I've done over the last 3 or 4 months here and see how many times I talked about how the Democrat Party has been gearing up to replace Joe Biden at the convention. But finally, it was revealed to the public. And when I say that, the debate choice of moving the debate and not accepting the Presidential Debate Commission, accepting the normal presidential debates, which normally have the debates later in the process, after the convention, after the two nominees are officially the nominees for president. Normally, they're after that point. This is the first time in modern American politics that the debate has been taking place in June, months before, or month and a half before, the Republican convention, which is coming up next week, and the Democrat convention, which is next month. That was an intentional decision. And I don't care who you support in the presidential election here. That was an intentional decision. Because what it did was it gave the Democrats time to put Joe out there to the public and let Joe Biden fail. Let America see who Joe Biden is, because he no longer is capable of being the president of the United States. And I believe the debate being scheduled in June and then being on CNN and then having CNN's audience listen to what they did after the debate. Because if you didn't tune in, immediately following the debate, the epically bad debate from Joe Biden, the demise of Joe Biden taking place in front of millions of people across this country, CNN went out there and said, we need to replace Joe. Democrats are freaking out. All of the people that are extremely on the left, extreme leftists, finally said enough's enough. It's sad what we're watching right now. It's elder abuse what we're watching right now. So I'm going to play a clip here. This is Van Jones of CNN. And if you know who Van Jones is probably further left than I am right, if that makes sense for a second. Van Jones is so far left. And for him to say this on national television immediately following the debate in front of a CNN audience, again, of mostly Democrats, this is how bad it was. So here is Van Jones talking about Joe Biden's epic debate.
That was cool. I love Joe Biden. I work for Joe Biden. He didn't do well at all. He did not do well at all. And he looked, I'll give you the analysis, you kind of have the old man versus the con man. I can walk you through how I'm supposed to see it and say it, but I just want to speak from my heart. I love that guy. That's a good man. He loves his country. He's doing the best that he can. But he had a test to meet tonight to restore confidence of the country and of the base, and he failed to do that. And I think there's a lot of people who are going to want to see him consider taking a different course now. We're still far from our convention, and there is time for this party to figure out a different way forward if he will allow us to do that. But that was not what we needed from Joe Biden, and it's personally painful for a lot of people. It's not just panic, it's pain for what we saw tonight.
So you hear it there. There's still time to replace Joe if he's going to let us do that. There's still time to replace Joe. Again, this is coming from Van Jones, an extreme leftist on a extreme leftist network of CNN, who just aired a debate where Joe Biden fell apart, and he's now saying there's still time to replace Joe Biden. Democrats need to consider, and there's still time for us to take an alternative course, and there's still time to replace Joe Biden. Pause for a second here and think about this. If they accepted, Joe Biden and Donald Trump accepted the Presidential Debate Commission, who normally does, for the last 45 years, normally does the presidential debates in this country leading up to an election, this debate would have taken place months later, after the convention. There would be no chance to replace Joe Biden post-debate. But because they didn't accept those debates, both have declined, and they did these two other debates. This first debate took place in June, which gives Democrats time to replace Joe Biden as the nominee. So again, you have to look beyond just, hey, they're accepting a debate. You have to start saying, wait, they accepted a debate on a CNN Biden-friendly network with CNN Biden-friendly moderators, and they stacked the card for Joe Biden to succeed. But really what they were doing was giving Joe one last chance to show he is capable. He can rule this country. He can lead us in some format. And like Van Jones said, this fell short on every level. It fell short, and he epically failed. But if you didn't watch the debate, and again, I'm sure anyone that's listening to this podcast, you either watched the debate or you at least saw some clips from the debate or at least saw how bad it really was. But how bad was the debate for Joe? How bad was the debate for the Biden campaign? I'm going to play a clip here now. This is a recently released Donald J. Trump for President campaign advertisement that Donald Trump posted on social media, and it's now running in a few states across the country. Here is the latest Donald Trump political campaign advertisement, just highlighting how bad the debate was for Joe Biden.
Folks, how are you? Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare, we're trying to provide housing for Black Americans. The impact on the choice, the idea that they're gonna, I've been proposing that everybody, the millionaires pay 1%. So no one I would not raise the cost of Social Security for anybody. I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6. And wants to get away with, get rid of the ability of Medicare for us to be able to negotiate drug prices with the big pharma companies. What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America. Billionaires in America. No one was hurt. No one Israeli was accidentally killed, and it just stopped. and I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
So there's the Trump latest advertisement. Again, just highlighting a few of the moments from the debate where Joe just seems like he wanted to say stuff, he couldn't recall it, he couldn't get it out, and just a struggle. And like Van Jones said it, and I'll say it here, and kind of just like I said, from my experience from having a grandma who had Alzheimer's or dementia or any of these mental decline, things that impact your mental cognition, it's sad. It's not even that, you could hate his politics. You could hate who Joe Biden is. You could think he's a criminal. You could think whatever you want about Joe Biden. What we witnessed on stage and what we've witnessed over the last 3.5 years is really sad. And like I said, it makes you really start to ask the question, who's calling the shots? Because that guy can. That guy can't do it. That guy hasn't been able to do it for a while. And so, and what people aren't really talking about is, yes, this is Joe Biden. This is what we've seen. The scarier part of the whole narrative here is this is Joe Biden after clearing his schedule for a week leading up to the debate. He had 7 days where he cleared his schedule as president, went to Camp David, and sat there and had debate prep for 7 consecutive days without his normal presidential duties. His schedule was cleared. This was a guy who was supposedly prepared for the debate. They had 7 days to get him ready to roll, and that's the product they put out. That's what many people aren't talking about. And again, that's something that scares me because this is Joe Biden, supposedly after being prepared, ready to go, rested, and that's the Joe that showed up. So imagine what Joe Biden's like when he's traveling to a G7 summit or going to an event in Russia to meet with Vladimir Putin to talk about peace. What happens when he's not rested and prepared for 7 days? You got to think. You got to ask yourself, what's really going on is scary. So before I dive into really where we go from here and talk about the narrative behind the narrative, I want to play one of this is the last clip I'm going to play here from the debate, but this was perhaps the most memorable moment from the debate. I think it's something that sticks with many people. Forget if you're right, left, center. Again, before I go into it, there are 3 sections, really, of people that were watching the debate. Either far-right people on the right who are going to support Donald Trump no matter what he said, people on the left who are going to support Joe Biden for the most part no matter what he said, and then there's a large chunk of people that are in the middle saying, I don't like Trump, but now they're asking themselves, how can I not like Trump more than that guy? Because that guy's dangerous, because he has no idea what he's doing. And so the debate is really about that. And this is the clip here from the debate that I believe stuck with those people in the middle the most, because it shows how quick-witted Donald Trump is, how strong Donald Trump looks, at least in comparison to Biden. Here's the clip, and then we're going to dive into what this means for our country. Here's a clip, the most memorable moment from the debate.
Continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look.
I mean, right there. I don't know what he said, and really, I don't think he knows what he said. And that moment, I believe, has been shared millions of times. It has been shared millions of times. I believe that's the most critical moment of the debate because, again, any viewer of it, if you're not a far left person, if you're on the right or the center, you're saying, yeah, I have no idea what he just said. I don't think he knows what he just said. He was trying to recall some, scripted line that he had, but he couldn't recall it because he's mentally not capable of doing that today. And again, forget if you like Biden. It is sad to watch what we watched. Now I want to talk about the overarching conversation and something that, again, as a voter, as a person who cares about this country, as a person who cares about the future of not only this country, obviously that's my priority. I have a family here. I have a daughter here. I have a wife here. I have, parents here. I mean, there's so much that I have here in this country that is meaningful to me that, yes, I am America first, but really the future of the globe is at stake. But I want you to think about this for a second. Just take a minute and think for yourself. I'm just going to lay out something for you. Think about how everything the Democrats have done since the start of this campaign cycle 3 years ago has epically, and even going back to 2016, has epically backfired and failed. It's really been an 8-year campaign against Donald Trump of just failing attempts to assassinate the character of Donald Trump. It started back in 2016 with Russia collusion, and what happens? Trump wins in 2016. Then they try to impeach Donald Trump 2 times. Trump gets impeached twice, and his poll numbers go through the roof, go up. Then January 6th, after he lost the election, even though he got more votes, substantially more votes than 2016, somehow he lost the election. Again, I'm not going to go into that. You can go back to previous podcast and hear my opinion on the 2020 election. But January 6th comes, and what happens? Trump got more popular on a global stage, more popular here in the United States. Then the Mar-a-Lago raid occurs, and his poll numbers go up again. Then you see the indictment and mugshot in Georgia, which they thought was going to be the stamp of death for Donald Trump. And what happens is Donald Trump's poll numbers go up again, and he raises money off of the mugshot, raises millions of dollars, historic numbers, millions of dollars off the mugshot that he took in Georgia. Then they had the E. Jean Carroll case in New York City. His poll numbers go up again. The New York City fraud case. And support from Wall Street starts flocking to Donald Trump. This was the loan case in New York City where Donald Trump paid back the loan in full, but they said there was fraud on the estimate and appraisal for the buildings and whatever it was. He paid back the loan. No one was harmed. And what happens after that, after a $300 or $400 million fine to Trump, he gets support from Wall Street, and again, poll numbers go up. Then we had the Stormy Daniels, Michael Cohen business records case in New York City. He gets charged, he gets indicted, and he gets convicted on 34 separate felony charges in the state of New York City for federal crimes. And what happens? His poll numbers go up once again, and he raised more money in 1 month during a presidential election than any candidate in the history of this country or any country around the globe. And then leading into this debate, and this is where, again, leading into this debate, Biden will post a video on social media challenging Trump to a debate that's outside of the Commission of Presidential Debates earlier than ever before. And Biden says, I'm only going to debate you if you debate on CNN with Biden-friendly moderators, with no audience in the room, where the mics get shut off when the other person is speaking, so you can't interrupt whatsoever. The debate was set up for Joe Biden to perform. The debate was set up for Joe Biden to be successful. And I argue to you to think about it for a second, the rules of this debate only helped one candidate. And it wasn't who it was intended to help. It helped Donald J. Trump. Because again, you go back to 2016 where Trump won every debate against every one of those, GOP candidates in the primary election leading up, where they all were on the stage, 12, 13, whatever it was, all were on the stage, and Trump sat in the middle and just annihilated one after another with one-liner after one-liner, interruption after interruption. That was who Donald Trump was. And again, then he goes on to debate Hillary Clinton. What happened? Again, one-liner after one-liner. And Hillary Clinton had the famous line, you don't want someone like this in charge of the Department of Justice. Trump interrupts and says, yeah, because you'd be in jail. That line, again, has been played over and over millions and millions of times. This is how Trump wins debates. It's by these little one-liners that stick with the general public. But what happened here on a national stage in front of 50 million live audience, 50 million people across this country, on a debate that was on CNN's network. Again, majority Democratic supporters watch CNN. And what happened? The rules set up for Joe Biden to be successful and for Donald Trump to fail. And the exact opposite occurs. Because again, if you're a Democrat watching the debate and Donald Trump interrupts, that does what to you? Forget what Trump's saying. Forget what Biden's saying. When Trump interrupts, you sit back and you say, well, this guy's an ass. This guy's an arrogant ass. He interrupts. He's not presidential. How's this guy going to be? So what happens is now Donald Trump didn't interrupt one time during the debate. He didn't even try to interrupt one time during the debate. He sat back. He was presidential. He said his piece. He didn't attack Biden at all. And again, you have to think again about the bigger picture. Forget if you're Democrat or Republican. Donald Trump currently is being attacked from all fronts, especially in the Department of Justice. He has indictments across the country that he believes, right or wrong, I believe he's right or wrong, he believes he's being attacked in a political prosecution because his political opponent is weaponizing the Department of Justice to go after him and charge him in all these states across the globe, across the country. Just got convicted of 34 felony counts to the guy that he believes stole the election from him because, again, going back to 2020, there are a lot of things that still haven't been uncovered. You're going to stand on a debate stage next to that guy who weaponized the Department of Justice against you, who just charged you essentially with 34 felony counts going to potentially send you to jail, and you're going to stand on stage next to him and not go after him and be presidential? Donald Trump was very poised. Some people are calling it Zen Donald Trump. But Donald Trump was poised on that stage. Didn't attack Joe Biden. Didn't attack the personal attacks, his appearance. He didn't even attack his mental cognition. The worst thing he said was the line I showed you, which was, I don't even know what he just said, and I don't think he knows what he just said. So Trump stood up there, and the debate rules that were put in place to harm Donald Trump actually ended up helping Donald Trump. The debate rules that were put in place to help Joe Biden ended up hurting Joe Biden. And that is the theme of this campaign cycle. And that is the theme that I want you to think about. Who would you rather have in the Oval Office? A guy that can get impeached twice? A guy that can get charged across the country? A guy that can get accused of being a Russian asset? A guy that can, take on multiple trials, a fraud case in New York City, a porn star case, a business records case, a raid on his home in Mar-a-Lago, being charged with an insurrection in Washington, D.C., and somehow he gets stronger from all of that. And then in a debate where all the rules are set up for him to fail, everyone said, you're an idiot, Trump, for even accepting this debate. Why would you accept it on a Biden-friendly network with Biden-friendly moderators, with Biden-friendly rules, with no audience, with microphones being turned off? And all of that ended up helping Donald Trump on the debate stage because this guy, whether you like him or you hate him, he is an overcomer. And Joe Biden does what Joe does, which is falls down. Not physically, even though we've seen many times where Joe Biden falls down physically, Joe Biden fell short of any kind of success on that debate stage. And so in a system that is built and rigged for one candidate, a system that is built and designed for one candidate to fail and one to succeed, I'd rather forget the politics for a second. I'd rather have the guy who's set up to fail, who succeeds, be the commander-in-chief, be the leader of the country, the leader of the free world, and make decisions because I know that guy, when he walks into a meeting with Putin, when everything's stacked against him, that guy can figure out a way to overcome it. When he walks into a trade deal with China, and everything stacked in his, against him and stacked against us as a nation, that guy can overcome it. Where you have the complete opposite with Joe Biden, where he's going to walk into those meetings with things maybe in our favor and figure out a way to F it up. And again, I don't like cursing on this podcast, but it comes down to you watch what's going on in this country and people need to wake up. Because again, I go back to it. At the start of this episode, I said, I've been saying for over a year now, the Democrats are poised and setting up to replace Joe Biden. And I was called a conspiracy theorist. And right now, conspiracy theorists in this country are more accurate, more right than the mainstream media that pumps lies and agenda down your throat on a daily basis to make you believe what they believe or what they want you to believe. And so it's time that people like you, like me, when we see it for a long time and then it comes true. Because again, this debate being earlier on CNN was intentional. I talked about the earlier, I explained why earlier. The CNN was intentional too, because Democrats were going to tune in and watch this debate. And now there was no choice. Now you as the CNN network have zero choice to lie to the public anymore, cover it up anymore. Because the Democrats in this country, the left wing in this country, saw Joe Biden for what Joe Biden is. Saw Joe Biden's mental state for what it is. Saw how Biden can't be the commander-in-chief. So if that wasn't enough, all of that wasn't enough. Last week, Donald Trump got a great ruling from the Supreme Court on January 6th, meaning they said no January 6th, all the J6ers, no Trump. Anyone that was there on J6 can be charged with obstruction of Congress. That is not allowed to be charged. It's unconstitutional to be charged. The Supreme Court ruled that last week, leading into the debate where Donald Trump obviously, annihilated Joe Biden the same way that Joe Biden just fell himself and crumbled like a cookie. And then yesterday comes. Yesterday comes. And the Supreme Court comes out and rules that Donald J. Trump and all former presidents of the United States of America have absolute immunity for official acts and are entitled to an assumption of immunity for other acts as president of the United States. This eliminates many of the cases right now. This is a big hindrance on the Georgia case, where the main piece of evidence in that case is that Donald Trump, as the president, called that famous phone call to Georgia and said, there's fraud. We got to find the fraud. Where's the fraud? You got to find the fraud. Well, if the president is trying to secure the election in this country, that's an official act. And obviously the J6 case is pretty much all but over at this point, because the two rulings in the last week piled together essentially eliminates most of the case, if not all of the case. So I'm going to play one clip here. This is from NBC News. And this is them talking about the big win for Donald J. Trump yesterday. And again, this comes off the heels of a big debate performance and a big win last week in the Supreme Court with the January 6th case. Trump had a historically good week. Joe Biden had a historically bad week at a very crucial time in this election cycle. Here's the NBC News talking about the Supreme Court ruling.
Tonight, a monumental win at the Supreme Court for former President Trump. The conservative majority finding the presumptive GOP nominee must receive sweeping immunity for any official acts taken during his presidency. The 6-3 ruling a defeat for special counsel Jack Smith, with the court bulldozing through the charges against Mr. Trump for his alleged criminal efforts to stay in power, making the completion of any trial before November virtually impossible. President Biden speaking late tonight.
Today's decision almost certainly means that there are virtually no limits on what the president can do.
Chief Justice John Roberts laying out a new sliding scale of what can be prosecuted, saying a president may not be prosecuted for exercising his core constitutional powers, that he has immunity from prosecution for all his official acts, but that a president has no immunity for private, unofficial acts, while cautioning the president is not above the law. A federal grand jury indicted the former president for orchestrating a conspiracy to retake the White House. Prosecutors alleging he leaned on his DOJ, VP, and state officials to help him reverse the election results, mobilizing meetings of fake electors. It all culminating in the violent attack on the Capitol on January 6. Mr. Trump has pleaded not guilty to all charges and argued without immunity, every president could be prosecuted by political opponents.
If you don't have immunity, you're not going to do anything. You're going to become a ceremonial president. You're not going to take any of the risks.
The majority today agreeing the commander-in-chief must be able to carry out his constitutional duties without risk of political prosecution. Writing, without immunity, such types of prosecutions of ex-presidents could quickly become routine, and that would weaken the presidency, which is exactly what the framers intended to avoid. The special counsel had pushed to get the case to trial before November.
My office will seek a speedy trial.
The ruling now dramatically chipping away at parts of Smith's case. The justices finding Mr. Trump's urging the then Attorney General to investigate voter fraud now absolutely immune from prosecution. What remains in the indictment, including his pressure on his former VP,
Mike Pence is going to have to come through for us,
are now entitled to a presumption of immunity. The liberal justices with a blistering pushback. Justice Sotomayor writing, when a president uses his official powers in any way, under the majority's reasoning, he will now be insulated from criminal prosecution. Orders the Navy SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival, immune. Organizes a military coup to hold on to power, immune. Takes a bribe in exchange for a pardon, immune. Even if these nightmare scenarios never play out, the damage has been done.
And Laura Jarrett joins us now live outside the Supreme Court tonight. Laura, what are official or unofficial actions by the president will be decided by a lower court, and that's going to push the timeline for another Trump trial?
Yes, Tom. Judge Chutkan now has a heavy burden to try to figure out what, if anything, remains in this indictment. And it's going to take some time for her to even get the case, schedule a hearing, potentially bring in witnesses and evidence, all of which Mr. Trump may try to appeal. Tom?
So you hear it there again, another win for Donald J. Trump in the courts. And you know, we're at a point here where it looks like many of these cases across the country against Trump are pretty much over. And when I say over, they may have elements of them remaining after the Supreme Court has now at least, blundered up and taken the Jack Smith cases and taken the cases across the country and taken out large elements of those cases. There may be some elements that still can be tried. But it comes down to there is not enough time now heading into the election where Trump's going to be dealing with them prior to November, prior to the election in November. And so what comes now is we're heading into probably the most crucial week coming up in the 11th and the 15th of July, two of the most crucial days of this campaign cycle, I believe. Obviously, the 11th, Donald Trump has his sentencing in New York City, and we could see potentially Trump get, sent to prison. I mean, that's a possibility. But what we're now looking at is beyond the New York City case, which he was convicted of 34 felonies, which obviously is going to be overturned by the Supreme Court at a later date. And there's elements of that case that can now be put on appeal because some of those payments to Michael Cohen that were part of the 34 felonies, some of them are now during his time as president, which could make them, at least on some degree, partially immune. So there could be even elements of that New York City case that can now be overturned, but it looks like the January 6th case is pretty much done and over with. And it looks like, again, the Mar-a-Lago case has elements that are now gone. And obviously the case in Georgia, the election case, is pretty much over. So you put all of that together, this week is huge because if Trump doesn't get sent to prison, doesn't get put on house arrest, and obviously that would be pending appeal, we then head into the RNC convention, the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, where Donald Trump is going to announce who his vice president is, which is going to be a huge day for Trump, huge day for Republicans. The news cycle is going to be all about that. And the mainstream media has no choice but to cover the RNC, which naturally gives any candidate a post-convention bump in the polls. So coming off the back of the bump in the polls that Trump just got because Biden blundered the debate, now we're seeing Trump get wins at the Supreme Court level. Now we're going to see Trump get a win by announcing his VP and get a win by having the convention and a post-convention bump. We could see this race completely and utterly change. At the same time, Democrats are having a civil war within their own party as to should they replace Joe Biden. And if they do, who is it going to be? That could become a civil war in itself. Republicans saw that back in 2016. They wanted one, candidate. All of a sudden, everyone wanted to be that candidate. There was 14, 15 people on that stage with Trump. And so, again, we're heading into very crucial times, and we here at the Why I'm Right podcast are going to cover it all because next week, the 11th, the 15th, there's going to be a lot of news coming out of those two different events. Obviously, we'll have a podcast on the sentencing, seeing what happens to Trump, where he's going from there, what are the implications of that sentencing, what does it look like, and then obviously, like I said, who the VP is. That's a podcast in itself. What's the impact on the race? Is it a female? Is it a minority? Is it a male? Is that the future of the MAGA movement? There's so many things that are going to come out in the next, the 11th and the 15th that we'll cover exclusively, extensively here on the Why I'm Right podcast. But it's time for you, like I said, it's no longer enough to be right. I was right about a lot of things over the last year. I was right about COVID. You go through the conspiracy theories that I was right about, and there are people beyond me who were even more right than I was. But I've said it for over a year. This Joe Biden, replacing Joe Biden before the convention, this has been a snowball that was set in course, pushed down the hill a year ago. And now that it's coming true, it's time for you, and it's time for the general public to start saying, hold on a second. What's really going on in this country? What do we really want the future of this nation to look like? What do we want the future of this nation to look like for your kids, your grandkids, your great-grandkids, and for generations to come? Because what we're seeing from the Democrat Party right now can only lead, because at this point, and I hate even saying this publicly, at this point, they really are starting to run out of options to beat Trump. They tried political assassination in 2016. They tried character assassination in 2020. They tried character assassination with January 6th and post-January 6th by charging him in all of these cases across the country, convicting him in New York City, going after his family, his son, Donald Trump Jr. What's left? The debate was the final straw where Joe's not coming back from it. And even if they replace him, they did polls this week, and it looks like Trump beats Michelle Obama, Trump beats Newsom, Trump beats anyone they put up right now because people see it for what it is. And I get scared that they are running out of already extreme options that we've seen over the last 4 years. And we could see potentially the most extreme option, which is assassination. And I hate even saying that, but they've tried, going after his character, going after his family, going after his businesses, going after him in the court system, going after him on the debate stage, they've tried absolutely everything, and nothing has prevailed. And like I said, this guy, Donald Trump, is an overcomer. They tried taking out Reagan. They took out Abraham Lincoln. They took out JFK. We just haven't seen it recently. But the polarization of this country right now, especially on the extreme ends, the right and the left, the extreme ends, is so polarized right now. And the direction of the country is at stake. We're at a point right now in this country where if Joe Biden gets elected and we have 4 more years of Democrat policies, socialist policies, policies that impact inflation, impact the value of the dollar, impact our economy, impact our spending, impact our healthcare system, impact our, education system. If we go down this path any further, we could be heading to the fall of one of the greatest experiments on the face of the planet, which is the United States Republic. And if we go in the right direction, we can overcome this, especially with a guy like Donald Trump. And guess what? Trump only has 4 years in office to get everything done. And Trump's ready to roll. And so if Trump gets in there, guys, we're going to move very, very quickly, very fast in the right direction. And we could bounce back from this. The economy could bounce back. We can close the border. Inflation can go back down. And our country could be on the right stand heading into a 2028 election where, again, there won't be the polarization of people that just dislike the candidate, Donald Trump, and like the policies that Trump put forward, the America First policies that Trump put forward. And so we're standing right now at a moment in time where I believe the Democrats have no choice but to go nuclear. And I've said that previously on this podcast, and we've seen them go nuclear. We've seen them weaponize the Department of Justice. We've seen them falsify documents. We've seen the CIA, FBI, all of our intelligence agents sign off on factually untrue information to try to sway an election. We've seen all that happen in front of us. And none of that is conspiracy. That is now proven. We've seen them lie about disease and impact the election, the way we vote in this country back in 2020 by having a pandemic of epic proportions and creating things that impact our education system 6 feet apart, impact our voting system. Now we have mail-in ballots. We've seen the nuclear already. So again, I hate even saying this. What are their choices now? If they really don't want Trump in office, which any Democrat right now will say to you, I do not want Donald Trump in office. And I'm talking about the leadership of the party, of the Democrat Party. They're at a point right now where, what are their options? Because, like I said, after the 11th, the 15th, vice presidential nominee, they announce who the vice president's going to be. He gets the convention bump. He's already winning in 5 of 6 swing states. He's already now eliminated Georgia from being up for grabs, which he lost in 2016 if you go by the result. 2020, if you go by the results of the election. They have no choice. And so I'm saying that here. Hopefully, if I say it, it becomes less likely to be true. But I'm fearful that we're at a point right now where we are looking at the last straw before they go completely nuclear. And Joe Biden's debate performance only made that more likely. So as we move forward on the Why I'm Right podcast, we're going to be covering all of the things I just mentioned. Convention, vice presidential nomination, sentencing, coming up in the next 2 weeks. Make sure you guys stay tuned. As I always say, if you guys want to email me, I'll get back to you. I'll respond to every single email I get. All you have to do is email me at matt@whyimrightpodcast.com. Visit our website, www.whyimrightpodcast.com. And check us out on social media, at Why I'm Right on Instagram, at Why I'm Right Pod on X. And as I always say, guys, this is the Why I'm Right podcast, and I just told you why I'm right.
You've been listening to Why I'm Right. Thanks for being a part of the Common Sense Army. Our passion is to cut through the noise and confusion and to bring light to clickbait and outright lies in the media. Unafraid, unapologetic, real and raw. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, find us on Instagram at Why I'm Right, on X at Why I'm Right Pod. And for more, hit the website at www.whyimrightpodcast.com. See you next time.